The rust-colored clouds hung low over New Haven Colony, casting long shadows across the crumbling ruins of the old settlement. 13-year-old Zena Jackson adjusted her environment suit's filters, watching as readings of the planet's harsh atmosphere scrolled across her visor display. The abandoned section of the colony stretched before her like a maze of broken dreams and forgotten technology. Echo, run another scan for temporal anomalies, Zena commanded, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The sleek, silver drone hovering beside her pulsed with soft blue light. Scanning, Zena. Temporal distortions detected approximately 300 meters northeast of our position. Echo responded, its artificial voice carrying a hint of concern. I must remind you that we're well beyond the colony's safety perimeter. Zena grinned beneath her helmet. That's exactly why we're here. Dad's stories about the temporal storms that hit this region can't all be exaggerations. She began picking her way through the debris, her boots leaving clear impressions in the red dust that covered everything. The colony had been established 50 years ago, but this section had been abandoned after a series of mysterious energy surges damaged the infrastructure. Most colonists blamed it on the planet's unstable magnetic field, but Zena's father, lead researcher Thomas Jackson, had always insisted there was more to the story. As they ventured deeper into the ruins, Echo sensors began to chirp more frequently. Energy readings are increasing exponentially. Zena, these patterns don't match any known natural phenomena in our database. Zena paused at the entrance to what had once been a research facility. The building's framework still stood, but its walls had long since crumbled. That's because they're not natural, Echo. Look at these markings. She brushed away decades of dust from a nearby panel, revealing intricate geometric patterns that seemed to pulse faintly under her touch. Analysis indicates these patterns are of artificial origin, but they predate human colonization by several thousand years. Echo reported, its drone body moving closer to capture detailed scans. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. Zena stumbled, catching herself against a wall as a deep humming filled the air. The geometric patterns began to glow brighter, lines of energy spreading out from where her hand touched the surface. Echo, what's happening? Multiple energy signatures detecting. Something large is materializing beneath us. The drone's usually calm voice carried an edge of urgency. The ground split open with a thunderous crack, and Zena jumped back as massive forms began to rise from the depths. Metal panels, smooth and silvery despite their age, emerged from the earth like the spine of some ancient beast. As the dust settled, Zena found herself staring at the impossible. A massive spacecraft, easily twice the size of the colony's largest building. Preliminary analysis suggests this vessel is not of Earth origin, Echo stated, unnecessary given the obvious alien design of the ship. Its hull was covered in the same geometric patterns Zena had found on the panel, but these were alive with pulsing energy. It's beautiful, Zena whispered, approaching the vessel with cautious steps. The ship's surface seemed to ripple like liquid metal, responding to her presence. Echo, are you recording this? Affirmative. Though I strongly advise against closer contact until we can alert the colony's research team. But Zena wasn't listening. She had spotted something. An entranceway was forming in the hull, the metal flowing aside like water to create an opening. Inside, soft blue light beckoned. Dad always said the temporal storms weren't natural, she said, moving closer to the entrance. They were trying to break through, to show us something. Zena, my safety protocols strongly suggest. Sometimes the biggest discoveries come from taking risks. Echo. She took a deep breath and stepped through the opening. Besides, you're with me. What could go wrong? The moment she entered the ship, the atmosphere changed. The air became charged with static electricity, and the walls hummed with power. Corridors stretched out before her, their surfaces covered in flowing patterns of light that seemed to be guiding her deeper into the vessel. Internal atmosphere is stable, Echo reported, following close behind. But these energy readings, They're unlike anything in my database. The technology here appears to operate on principles we don't yet understand. Xena moved carefully through the ship, her heart pounding with each step. The corridors seemed to shift and change around them, leading them toward something. She could feel it, a pulling sensation in her mind, like a distant voice calling her name. They entered a vast chamber that could only be the bridge. A central platform stood empty, surrounded by what appeared to be control stations. But instead of buttons or switches, there were only flowing patterns of light and floating holographic displays. Echo, look at this. Xena approached the central platform, where a single object hovered in midair. A crystalline sphere about the size of her fist, pulsing with inner light. Caution advised. The object appears to be the ship's primary power source, but its energy signature is evolving. The sphere began to pulse more rapidly as Xena approached, its light synchronizing with her heartbeat. The geometric patterns throughout the ship brightened in response, and suddenly the air was filled with holographic displays, star charts, diagrams, and strings of symbols that danced through the air. Xena. Echo's voice was urgent now. The ship's systems are activating. We should. But before the drone could finish, the sphere flashed brilliantly, and a voice filled the chamber. Not human, not entirely artificial, but something in between. Genetic sequence recognized. Keeper protocol initiated. The sphere's light enveloped Xena, and in that moment, everything changed. Images flooded her mind. Distant worlds, ancient civilizations, and a terrible danger that had been sleeping for thousands of years. She saw why the ship had been hidden here, waiting for someone like her. As the light faded, Xena steadied herself against the platform, her mind reeling from the vision. She looked at Echo, her voice barely a whisper. We need to get back to the colony. Now. What did you see? Echo asked, sensing the urgency in her tone. Xena stared at the sphere, which now pulsed steadily like a heartbeat. The beginning. This isn't just a ship, Echo. It's a warning. And somehow, I'm part of it. The geometric patterns on the walls pulsed one final time before dimming to a soft glow, as if the ship was settling into a watchful sleep. But Xena knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge would be convincing the colony's leaders about what she had discovered, and what was coming. As they made their way back through the ship's corridors, Xena couldn't shake the feeling that her life had irrevocably changed. The colony, her family, everything she knew. It was all about to become part of something much bigger than she could have imagined. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, something ancient was stirring, drawn to the awakening of the ship she had just discovered. Ancient awakening. The journey back to New Haven Colony felt longer than usual, each step weighted with the knowledge Xena now carried. Echo hovered silently beside her, occasionally emitting soft peeps as it processed the massive amount of data collected from the alien vessel. The rust-colored clouds had darkened, promising another of the planet's infamous dust storms. Your vital signs indicate elevated stress levels, Echo noted, breaking the silence. The neural interface with the ship's systems may have had unexpected effects. Xena touched her temple, where phantom images still flickered through her mind. I'm fine, Echo. It's just processing everything. The ship didn't just show me images. It shared memories, entire lifetimes of knowledge. The colony's perimeter fence came into view, its force field shimming faintly in the dying light. Guard towers loomed overhead, their sensors already tracking their approach. Xena took a deep breath, knowing what would come next. Xena Jackson. Her father's voice boomed through the entrance checkpoint speakers. Inside. Now. Thomas Jackson stood in the airlock chamber, his research uniform wrinkled from a long day in the labs. His stern expression melted into concern as Xena removed her helmet, revealing her pale face and slightly glowing eyes, a lingering effect of the ship's interface. Your eyes, he whispered, moving closer. What happened out there? Before Xena could answer, alarms blared throughout the colony. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an eerie glow as Colony Director Regina Walsh's voice echoed through the speakers. All personnel to emergency stations. Unidentified energy signature detected approaching colony perimeter. That would be the ship, Xena said quietly. Her father's eyes widened. What ship? The ground trembled as something massive passed overhead, casting a shadow that blocked out the evening light. Through the airlock's transparent ceiling, they watched in awe as the alien vessel moved with impossible grace, its liquid metal hull reflecting the colony's lights. That ship, Xena pointed. And it's following me because, well, apparently I'm its new keeper. The next few hours passed in a blur of debriefings and medical examinations. Colony leadership gathered in the main conference room, a stark space dominated by holographic displays currently showing various angles of the alien vessel now hovering above the colony. Director Walsh paced the room, her usually immaculate uniform showing signs of stress. Let me get this straight. You found an alien ship, interfaced with its systems, and now it's, what? Bonded to you. It's more complicated than that. Xena tried to explain, frustrated by how inadequate words felt. The ship was left here by a species called the Astrani. They are watchers, guardians of developing civilizations. Which is it? Chief Security Officer Marcus Rodriguez leaned forward, his cybernetic eye whirring as it analyzed Xena. Both. The Astrani discovered something, a cosmic threat that forced them to scatter across the galaxy, hiding their technology until species worthy of inheriting it emerge. Xena gestured to the ship displayed on the screens. This vessel is called the Starweaver. It's not just a ship. It's a library, a warning system, and, she hesitated, a weapon. The room fell silent. Echo, who had been quietly hovering near the ceiling, descended to project additional data collected from the ship. The vessel's energy signature matches temporal disturbances recorded in this region over the past 50 years. It was trying to communicate. Thomas Jackson stepped forward, years of research suddenly clicking into place. The temporal storms, the electromagnetic anomalies. The ship was scanning us, waiting for someone compatible with its systems. But why Xena? Director Walsh asked, voicing the question everyone was thinking. As if in response, the ship pulsed with light, and new holographic displays filled the conference room. Star charts materialized, showing the position of Earth and its colonies relative to something massive moving through deep space, something ancient and terrifying. Because, Xena said, her voice steady as the knowledge flowed through her, the threat the Astrani flood from is returning. And somehow, through quirks of genetics and timing, I'm capable of interfacing with their technology. The ship didn't just choose me. It's been waiting for someone like me for thousands of years. The displays shifted, showing images that made several colony leaders step back in shock. A darkness moving between the stars, consuming everything in its path. Entire civilizations reduced to cosmic dust. They called it the Void Tide. Xena continued. It's not alive, not really, but it's not simply a natural phenomenon either. It's like a wave of uncreation, breaking down the very fabric of space-time. The Astrani found a way to fight it, but the cost. She trailed off, the memories of ancient sacrifices weighing heavily in her mind. How long do we have? Rodriguez asked, his tactical mind already calculating strategies. Months, maybe years. The ship's sensors are still calibrating to current space-time coordinates. Xena turned to Director Walsh. But we can't face this alone. The ship contains coordinates for other Astrani vessels, hidden on other worlds. We need to find them, wake them up. You're 13, Walsh said firmly. We can't just let you go gallivanting across the galaxy on some ancient alien ship. With all due respect, Director, Echo interjected, its usually neutral tone carrying a hint of urgency. The ship's systems are specifically attuned to Xena's neural patterns now. No one else can operate it at full capacity. Thomas Jackson had been quiet, studying the data with a researcher's eye. Finally, he spoke. The ship chose her for a reason. And if what these readings show is accurate, we don't have the luxury of waiting. The room erupted in argument, but Xena barely heard them. Her attention was drawn to new images forming in her mind. Other ships awakening across the stars, other keepers coming to consciousness. They weren't alone in this fight. A sudden surge of energy from the Star Weaver silenced everyone. The ship's presence seemed to fill the room, its ancient consciousness brushing against their minds. The void tide isn't just coming for Earth, Xena said, standing. It's coming for everything. The Astrani spent thousands of years preparing for this moment, setting up a network of vessels and keepers across the galaxy. I'm just one part of something much bigger. She walked to the window, watching as the Star Weaver's hull rippled with patterns of light that seemed to dance in rhythm with her heartbeat. We can either hide and hope it passes us by, or we can do what the Astrani couldn't, unite the galaxy to face this threat together. Director Walsh sighed, recognizing the weight of the moment. And I suppose you have a plan. Xena smiled, feeling the ship's knowledge flowing through her mind. Actually, I do. But first, we need to wake up the others. The Star Weaver isn't alone out there, and neither are we. As if in response, the ship pulsed with brilliant light, its message clear. Time was running out, and their journey was about to begin. Guardians of the past. The Star Weaver's bridge hummed with energy as Xena stood at the central control platform, her hands hovering over the crystalline interface. 2 weeks had passed since the ship's awakening, and the colony's leadership had finally agreed to her proposal, albeit with conditions. Final systems check complete, Echo announced, its drone form now enhanced with Astrani technology, giving it an ethereal blue glow. All colony support personnel are secured in the auxiliary chambers. Xena nodded, feeling the ship's consciousness merge with her own. The neural link had grown stronger with each passing day, filling her mind with centuries of knowledge that sometimes made her feel ancient beyond her years. Status report. Thomas Jackson's voice came through the ship's communication system. He and a small team of colony scientists had been granted permission to accompany them on their mission to find the other hidden vessels. The Star Weaver's star maps show 3 other vessels within reasonable range. Xena replied, watching as holographic star charts materialized around her. The closest is on Kepler 186f, about 20 light-years from here. 20 light-years, one of the scientists exclaimed. That would take 3 hours, Xena interrupted, allowing herself a small smile. The Astrani mastered fold space technology millennia ago. Distance works differently for their ships. The Star Weaver's engines began to pulse, sending waves of energy through the hull. Through the neural link, Xena could feel the ship's excitement. There was no better word for it. After thousands of years of waiting, it was finally fulfilling its purpose. Beginning fold space initialization, she announced, her eyes glowing with the same blue light that ran through the ship's systems. Everyone should prepare for temporal displacement. The space around the ship began to twist, reality itself bending as the Star Weaver prepared to tear a hole in the fabric of space-time. Xena had done several small jumps in the past week, practicing with the ship's systems, but this would be their first major leap. Warning, Echo suddenly announced, its sensors pulsing rapidly, detecting anomalous energy signature at the edge of our scanning range. Pattern matches void tide remnants. Xena's heart skipped a beat. The memories shared by the ship showed her exactly what those remnants meant. Fragments of the cosmic horror that had scattered the Astrani, like ripples preceding a tidal wave. Adjusting course to avoid the disturbance, she said, her fingers dancing over the crystal controls. Fold space jump in 3, 2, 1. Reality shattered around them. The Star Weaver slipped through the crack in space-time like a needle through fabric, entering a realm where the normal rules of physics held no sway. Through the ship's sensors, Xena could see streams of possibility flowing past them like rivers of light. Remarkable, her father whispered, watching the fold space phenomena through the bridge's viewing panels. The energy efficiency of this system is beyond anything we theorized. The Astrani didn't just master space travel, Zena explained, the ship's knowledge flowing through her. They learned to weave the very fabric of reality. Each ship is like a needle, threading through the cosmos, maintaining the pattern that holds everything together. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. The fold space corridor around them rippled with distortion. Multiple temporal fractures detected. Echo reported, "Something is following us through fold space." Zena's eyes widened as she accessed the ship's rear sensors. Something was moving through the corridor behind them, a mass of writhing darkness that seemed to devour the streams of possibility it touched. "It's a void-tide probe," she realized, ancient memories flooding her mind. "They send them ahead to test new hunting grounds. If it follows us to Kepler 186f. She didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone knew what was at stake. The probe would report back to the main void tide, revealing the location of not just one Astrani vessel, but potentially two. "Can we fight it?" Thomas asked, gripping his console as the ship shuddered. Zena shook her head. "Not here, not in fold space. But maybe." She closed her eyes, connecting deeper with the ship's systems. "Echo, reroute power from the auxiliary systems to the temporal wake generators." "Acknowledged." "Warning, this will significantly increase structural stress on the vessel." The warning. Kepler 186f's crimson sun painted the alien landscape in shades of deep red and purple. The Starweaver descended through layers of atmosphere, its sensors scanning for signs of the hidden vessel they detected from orbit. Zena stood at the controls, her eyes closed, following the pull of something ancient calling to her from beneath the planet's surface. "Life signs detected," Echo reported, its enhanced sensors sweeping the terrain below. "Complex biological activity approximately 3 kilometers ahead." And something else. Zena opened her eyes, watching as holographic displays materialized around her. "I see it. There's someone down there, already at the site. Another keeper." Through the neural link, she could feel the other consciousness now, young like her own, but already connected to its vessel. The sensation was strange, like looking into a mirror and seeing a different reflection. The Starweaver settled onto a vast plain of crystalline formations that sparkled under the red sunlight. Through the bridge viewport, they could see a figure standing beside a partially exposed structure that could only be another Astrani vessel. "Remember the protocol," Thomas Jackson reminded everyone as they prepared to disembark. "We don't know how this keeper will react to our presence." Zena nodded, though she could already sense no hostility from the other consciousness, only curiosity and relief. The ship's main hatch opened, extending a ramp to the crystalline surface below. The figure approached as they descended. It was a boy, perhaps a year older than Zena, with dark skin and eyes that glowed with the same blue light as her own. A sleek drone, similar to Echo, but with golden accents, hovered protectively by his side. "I wondered when someone would come," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent. "I'm Rishi. My ship is the Stormbreaker." He gestured to the massive form behind him, its hull design similar to the Starweaver's, but with distinct patterns that flowed like water. "I'm Zena. This is Echo, my father, and our research team." She stepped forward, feeling the connection between their ships humming in the air between them. "How long have you been awakened?" 3 days, Rishi answered. "I was exploring these ruins with my mother. She's a xenoarchaeologist with the Indian Space Research Organization's colonial expedition. When I found this ship, it chose me." He turned to look at the Stormbreaker, its hull rippling with patterns of light. "But you've seen more than I have, haven't you? Through your ship's memories." Zena nodded grimly. "The void tide. It's worse than we thought. We encountered one of its probes on our way here." Rishi's eyes widened. "Then we don't have much time. The Stormbreaker has shown me fragments, images of what happened to the Astrani. But there's something else, something both ships have been trying to tell us. Before Xena could respond, both the Starweaver and Stormbreaker pulsed with simultaneous bursts of energy. The crystalline ground beneath their feet began to glow, revealing intricate patterns that spread outward in all directions. "It's a map," Echo and Rishi's drone, which he called Astra, said in unison. The patterns formed a three-dimensional projection of the galaxy, with dozens of points of light marking the locations of other hidden vessels. But there was something else, a massive structure, indicated by a pulsing red marker deep in intergalactic space. "The Nexus," Xena breathed, the knowledge flowing through her neural link. "It's the heart of the Astrani defense network. Every ship, every keeper, was meant to gather there when the time came." "But why didn't they use it before?" Thomas asked, studying the holographic display. "If they had this weapon against the Void Tide." "Because it wasn't ready," Rishi answered, his connection to the Stormbreaker providing the missing pieces. "The Nexus requires all the ships, all the keepers, working in perfect synchronization. The Astrani couldn't achieve that level of unity in time. But they hoped. They hoped we could," Xena finished. "Different species, different worlds, but united by a common purpose. That's why the ships chose children. Minds flexible enough to form the neural links, young enough to learn to work together." Suddenly, both ships' alarm systems activated. The holographic display shifted, showing a massive disturbance moving through space, far larger than the probe they'd encountered. "No," Rishi whispered. "The probe's destruction must have drawn its attention. A fragment of the main Void Tide is changing course, heading toward this sector." Echo's sensors pulsed rapidly. Estimated time of arrival: 72 hours. This fragment alone has sufficient mass to consume both Kepler-186 and the New Haven colony. Xena looked at Rishi, seeing her own determination reflected in his glowing eyes. "We need to find the others. All of them. Not just to fight the Void Tide, but to reach the Nexus before it's too late." "The nearest ship is in the TRAPPIST system," Rishi said, accessing the Stormbreaker's star charts. "But there's something else we need to consider." He hesitated, looking between their vessels. "The ships, they're not just weapons or tools. They're alive, in their own way. And they're scared." Xena felt it too. Beneath the ancient knowledge and power, there was a very real fear in both vessels. They had witnessed the fall of their creators, the destruction of entire civilizations. They knew exactly what they were facing. "Then we give them hope," she said firmly. "The Astrani tried to fight alone, each ship, each crew isolated from the others. We do this together, humans, ships, whatever other species we find out there. The Void Tide wants to unmake creation. Fine. We'll remake it, stronger than before." The ground trembled as both ships hummed in agreement, their hulls shimmering with renewed purpose. Thomas and the research team exchanged glances, realizing that the children standing before them were no longer just children. They were inheritors of an ancient legacy, humanity's first line of defense against cosmic extinction. "How many others are out there?" Thomas asked, looking at the map of hidden vessels. 23, Rishi and Xena said simultaneously, their neural links providing the exact number. "And we have 72 hours to find as many as we can before that Void Tide fragment arrives." The Starweaver and Stormbreaker began to power up, their systems synchronizing in preparation for joint fold space travel. As they prepared to depart, Xena looked at the crimson sky above, knowing that somewhere out there in the darkness, other keepers were awakening, other ships were stirring from their long slumber. The real question was, would they find them all in time? Legacy of the stars. The void between galaxies stretched endlessly before them, a darkness deeper than any human eye had ever witnessed. The Starweaver and Stormbreaker led a fleet of 7 Astrani vessels, each piloted by a keeper they'd managed to find and awaken in their desperate race against time. Xena stood at the Starweaver's control platform, surrounded by holographic displays showing the status of their makeshift armada. Through the neural link, she could feel the presence of every keeper, their minds connected across the vast distances of space. Void tide fragment has altered course, Echo announced, its enhanced sensors tracking the cosmic horror pursuing them. It's accelerating. It knows what we're trying to do. Rishi's voice came through the ship's communication system. Beside him, 14-year-old Jun from Mars Colony piloted the Lightweaver, while twins Adana and Amara from Europa Station guided the Dream Chaser. The other vessels, Storm Dancer, Starforge, and Voidwalker, were crewed by keepers from colonies and stations across human space. The Nexus is just ahead, Xena announced, feeling the ancient structures pull through the Starweaver's systems. Echo, status report on the other ships. All vessels operating at 93% efficiency. Neural synchronization between keepers holding steady at 87%. The drone paused. But Xena, we're still missing 16 ships. The Nexus was designed to channel the power of all 23 vessels, with only 7. She knew what Echo wasn't saying. The Astrani had failed because they couldn't achieve perfect synchronization between their ships. Now, humanity's representatives were attempting the same feat with less than a third of the intended power. We have something the Astrani didn't, Xena replied, her voice carrying across the neural link to all keepers. We have each other. And we have no choice. The Nexus finally came into view, a massive structure floating in the void, its design an impossible geometry of flowing metal and crystalline surfaces. It dwarfed their fleet, its size beyond human comprehension. By the stars, Thomas Jackson whispered from his observation post. The power readings, they're off any scale we have. Xena could feel the Nexus awakening as they approached, responding to the presence of the Astrani vessels. Ancient machinery, dormant for millennia, began to stir. Multiple fold space ruptures detected. Echo's warning came just as reality tore open around them. Through the gaps emerged more ships, not Astrani vessels, but refugee ships from Earth's colonies. The void tide fragment reached the outer colonies, Adana reported grimly. These are survivors, fleeing ahead of it. Xena watched as the refugee ships streamed past their fleet, carrying thousands of humans seeking safety. Each vessel's passage was a reminder of what they were fighting for. We can't wait for the other ships, she decided, feeling agreement pulse through the neural link from the other keepers. We make our stand here. The Nexus's surface shifted as they approached, opening like a flower to reveal a central chamber large enough to accommodate their entire fleet. As they moved into position, the structure began to interface with their vessels, ancient systems connecting with the neural network linking the keepers. The void tide fragment will be here in 17 minutes, Echo reported. Size estimate, sufficient to consume a small galaxy. Through the neural link, Xena could feel the fear from the other keepers, not for themselves, but for those they'd left behind. Every one of them had family on the colonies, loved ones in the path of cosmic destruction. Listen to me, she broadcast across the link, her consciousness touching each of theirs. The Astrani built this place as a weapon, yes, but they also built it as a tool of creation. The void tide unmakes reality. Then we'll remake it, right here, right now. The Nexus's systems fully activated, connecting with each ship in a web of energy that stretched across the void. Through the link, Xena could feel the structure's true purpose, not just a weapon, but a lens through which the combined power of the ships could be focused and amplified. Neural synchronization reaching 92%. Echo announced. 95. 97. The void ahead of them began to ripple as the void tide fragment approached. A wall of uncreation that devoured light itself. But where the Astrani had seen only destruction, Xena saw something else through the combined knowledge of their ships. It's not just about destroying the void tide, she realized, the understanding flowing through the neural link to the others. It's about filling the void it leaves behind. Creation and destruction in perfect balance. Like the ships themselves, Rishi added, catching her meaning. They don't just travel through space-time. They weave it. Adana and Amara finished in unison. The void tide fragment loomed before them, its mass distorting space itself. But now, connected through the nexus, their ships humming with power, none of them felt fear. Together, Xena commanded, and 7 young voices responded as one, their minds and ships synchronized through the ancient machine. The nexus flared with blinding light as reality itself bent to their combined will. The void-tide fragments surged forward, but where it sought to unmake, they remade. Where it destroyed, they created. 7 ships, 7 keepers, their power magnified through the nexus into something new, not a weapon, but a tool of transformation. Space itself began to change around them, the very fabric of reality responding to their unified purpose. The void-tide fragment, for the first time in its ancient existence, met something it couldn't simply consume, a force of creation equal to its power of destruction. Through their neural link, Xena felt the moment everything changed. The void-tide fragment didn't just die or disappear. It was transformed, its energy of uncreation converted into pure potential raw material for the creation of new stars, new worlds. As the light faded, they saw what they had accomplished. Where the fragment had been, a new nebula was forming, its gases already coalescing into the seeds of future solar systems. "We did it," Jun whispered through the link. "But the main void tide will come," Xena acknowledged. "But now we know how to fight it. And we'll find the other ships, gather more keepers. We've proven what the Astrani always hoped, that together, we're stronger than the darkness." The refugee ships began to emerge from hiding, their crews witnessing the impossible. A force that had terrorized the cosmos since the dawn of time, finally meeting its match in 7 children and their ancient vessels. Through the neural link, Xena felt something else. Hope, not just from the other keepers, but from the ships themselves. The Starweaver's consciousness touched her mind with something like pride, sharing a vision of the future. More ships awakening, more keepers joining their cause, species across the galaxy uniting against the darkness. "So," Rishi's voice carried a smile, "what's our next move?" Xena looked out at the newly formed nebula, then at the fleet of refugee ships carrying humanity's future among the stars. "We protect what we can, find who we can, and prepare for the real fight. The Astrani left us these ships for a reason, not just to survive, but to thrive. To prove that creation will always be stronger than destruction." The nexus hummed with power around them, ready for whatever came next. And somewhere out in the cosmic deep, 16 more ships waited to be found. 16 more keepers waited to be awakened. Their story was just beginning.